Hello, it's James from XRobots.co.uk. This is part 17 of Hulkbuster, which is standing behind me. In previous episodes, I've built a plywood frame which I can climb into, unlock all the joints and then walk around in. And I've been working my way through putting all of the detail pieces on, including the arms and the shoulder mechanics and some of the panels. A couple of weeks ago we worked on the Unibeam, which was a collaboration with Adafruit, who supplied the NeoPixel rings that you can see spinning around there, and did some of the coding for Arduino. This time we're going to work on the chest plate, which will include permanently mounting the Unibeam, getting rid of some of these temporary cardboard panels to make the correct ones. If you like this video, make sure you click on like, and then I'll know that you really like this series. There's other projects in my channel, including my 3D printed alien xenomorph suit, and if you like that, then make sure you like that video as well. That'll tell me that you like it, and also tell YouTube that you like it, which means I'll show the video to more people, I may get more subscribers, and I'll be able to carry on producing excellent projects. Before we get on with the video this week, I need to give a shout out to Daniel Riddin, who's one of my patrons. He's sponsored me on patreon.com/xrobots. Daniel's website is danielriddin.nu. It's in Swedish, but you can use Google Translate to read it, and it's got some quite interesting stuff on. I'll put the link in the description to this video if you'd like to have a look. If you'd like to sponsor me, you can do so for as little as $1 a month. You can fund on Patreon per video, but set a monthly cap to some other amount. This will get you access to an exclusive live broadcast with me, my digital downloads for free, and access to an exclusive discussion group on reddit.com. So I'm going to build these panels in a similar fashion to some of the others I've done, which is using 3mm foam PVC board. So this is also called Sintra or Foamex, but essentially you can heat it and form it quite easily, and you can also cut it quite easily and paint it, and it's just a really good material. So I've got some A3 sheets there and some more out of shot of the camera. And I've also got some Plastazote foam leaned up here, so I've got some 5mm and some 10mm thick LD45 foam, and the supplier for that is on the resources page on my website, and that's what I originally built my foam Iron Man suit out of, which was then sealed, moulded and cast to make the current project that you can also see in my channel. So as well as mounting the Unibeam in the suit, in the chest there, we also need to change the contours. So I'd like to make this more of that chiseled typical chest shape that slopes in at the bottom, and also I'd like to have it slope out slightly more. Now I've got the arms and the shoulders on, we can kind of see that what we need to do is have a slightly more pronounced chest, and that'll give me more room inside for control, electronics and some other bits and pieces. I really like these panels to open up, so those are going to be on servos, so they open and close. So when I climb into the suit, as well as the back opening, which I dealt with last time, the rest of the panels open. I think I'm going to have some electronics and blue lights and things in there, hoping some of the panels will open so you can see me climbing into it from the front, not just from the back, and that'll be the same for the legs and the other panels when I get to do it. So here's the Unibeam, which I need to mount in the chest. I've got my clear dome, which was actually half of a hemisphere which had some sweets in at Christmas, so I have to look out for those again in the supermarkets if you want one. So that fits on there quite nicely, and this was the original cardboard temporary chest plate. So obviously there's a massive gap around it, and sticking it like that means that the dome sticks out quite a lot. I don't really want it to look like that, so I'm going to make the hole smaller in this, and it's going to kind of touch the actual dome, so you can see the Unibeam, but there's not so much sticking out, so it's more of a shallow dome on the front sticking out of the chest plate. So let's try and map that out and cut out some sections. So I've marked out my pattern there, and I've just drawn round this breakfast bowl, which I measured by putting into the dome to see where it touches the sides, so that I can get the contour for that exactly the right size. It's only very smaller than the bottom of this dome, but obviously it slopes inwards, so that should just leave the front section showing through the hole. So I need to cut this out now, which I'm going to use a normal craft knife, and I'll have to be very careful with this round piece because it's going to be quite tricky to get it as neat as possible. So I've got that out quite carefully. I had to go around about 3 times. I'm now going to peel off the protective film that I was drawing on. We have to be very careful not to dent this because it's quite soft. In fact, there's some lumps on my cutting mat and a few scars in the back side, but that's not so important. So let's just see how that dome fits. Yeah, I think that's going to be pretty good. So now we can just tidy that up a bit. So some of my cuts weren't quite perfect, but this is quite soft stuff, so we can use some sandpaper there and just give that a bit of a touch up on the inside. Get off any bits and pieces. And then we can go and paint and prime it. So I'm going to do some 3D printed parts and I'm going to paint this up and fix it on, and then we can use that as a key to work out where the other pieces go. So this is my spray booth which I built a couple of weeks ago. Have a look in my channel for that. I've got an extractor at the back there to pull out the paint spray off through an air filter, and that's extracting through this conduit which goes out of the window. So basically most of the spray off is caught in the box and it doesn't go all around the house, and I don't have to spray outside in the wind and the rain. So I'm going to be using grey primer and Ford Rosso red, which is the same I've painted all the pieces in. So there's my painted piece, and as you can see the dome fits in there quite nicely. Obviously that looks a bit blank, so I'm going to attach some 3D printed details which are going to be fitted around it to give it some extra features. And I'm also going to 3D print some parts to mount this up. Now this is going to be backed with some of the thicker foam I showed you at the beginning, and that is actually going to need to be slightly bigger, so when my opening parts open, they overlap the edge, so we really don't want to see the gaps between the pieces. We want that to have a black foam backing, and then the opening flaps to rest on the overhang, so when they open you can see inside, and when they're closed you only see the black seam line. Right, so I've drawn that red part in Autodesk 123D Design here, and I've also drawn the dome so I can size things. And what I've decided to do is put these black features on, which are going to be printed in black and stay in black. And that's just going to be there to encapsulate the dome a bit so it's not sticking out quite so much, so it's sort of recessed in those parts, and just add some more detail features, and this is what you'll expect from the rest of the suit parts as well. Underneath there we've kept a bit of an angle against the flat chest plate on the frame, and I've made these 3 stilts which will also be printed in black ABS, and that will allow me to screw it on to the suit. As I mentioned, this will be backed in foam, but I'll have to cut that around the stilts and make sure that it's big enough so that the overlapping parts will close against it. So you can probably hear those parts printing already. Let's get those printed off and stuck together. So there's the first set of 3D printed parts which I've attached to the chest plate, and I've just put that on there so we can see what it's like. I'm just going to kill the light here so I can get rid of the reflections. So I'm pretty sure that's cool. Let's just bring the camera down so you can kind of see that the Unibeam and arc reactor units are inside this dome. It's also quite recessed because of these pieces I've put on, so the dome is only slightly higher. So I think that's going to look pretty good. So you can hear the other pieces printing, and when those are done we can talk about getting it mounted. Okay, so I've printed out my other stilt parts. I've also backed this thing with foam so that I've got some place for the other panels to overlap when they open and close. And on the back I've stuck on one stilt. I've actually cut holes in the foam here for the 3 pieces, so they stick directly to the foam PVC and they're not stuck on the back of this foam, which will make them more flexible. So let's get those glued on and we'll offer it up and start planning the rest of the pieces. Okay, so here it is. So that fits on there quite nicely. It looks like my stilts are lined with the wooden frame. So now I need to do the same with the rest of these panels. So these pieces are the ones that are going to flip open and closed. So I need to cut those out of foam PVC and make some more hinged mountings with servo brackets on. So these are the next two pieces which replace these cardboard pieces which are right up in the top corners, and I've made the replacements slightly bigger, as you can see. So that means the top of it's bigger. They cover the brackets where the shoulders are attached, and then the bottom part will taper off in more of a chiselled shape. So I've cut my foam backing that handily fits onto the last piece. There's a bend in this. I don't really want too many sharp corners. I'd quite like more contours. So I'm going to heat this up. This is foam PVC. I can heat this up with a hot air gun and bend it fairly easily. And I'm going to attempt to just bend that around a can to get a nice curve on there, so a bit of a contour. And then we'll probably have to trim the foam to match as it curves round. It's smaller on the inside of the curve. So let's get that heating. That should do, and we're just going to Right, so I've attached these pieces with the 3D printed brackets that I've just printed, and these are painted up, and again they've got foam backing them with a bit of an overlap. The next piece that fits on is going to be this one, which goes approximately there, and that's the one that I want to hinge open so you can see lots of stuff inside it. So what we need to do next is make a kind of another bracket and a 3D printed bit of mechanics, which will have some LEDs and things on, and a servo mount, and a hinge along the back edge here, so we can hinge this outwards. So here's the part that I'm going to hinge those bits of armour on, which are on the sides towards the middle of the chest plate. We've got space there to mount a servo in the middle, and a hole there for the servo horn to go through. And we've also got some other hinge bracket pieces, which are the two lumps nearest us now, and these other spare pieces on the side, which make the actual hinge for the armour piece. I've put a pattern on there, so we can mount some LEDs. Perhaps we can have an array of LEDs flashing away there, and also some holes so you can see me getting into the suit through the piece. So that's already printing, as you can probably hear in the background. So let's see what that looks like. Right, so I've printed one of those things, and I've also mounted the hinges on this piece. So this thing opens, as you can see. I've foamed back the piece of bodywork, and I've got the 3D printed things in there, which are the hinges. So this can open and shut. So the aim is that we've got lots of blue lights and things. I've got some holes for LEDs. All of these little holes are for blue LEDs. And that's a mesh, so you can kind of see me through it when it opens and I get into it. There's a hole for a servo there, so I'm going to be using these standard RC servos mounted that way around. So the servo horn can turn through the hole. And I'll be printing a custom servo horn that basically pushes this thing open. So we'll see how this looks on the suit. I need to print some more brackets to mount it. So we need to make sure we mount this correctly, so when this is shut, this panel fits properly, and then when the servo pushes it open, you can see the details inside, which will be a nice array of blue glowing LEDs. They could also flash in a pattern. We could have a sequencer on there, some other bits and pieces. I'll probably paint this piece silver as well. And I could optionally, of course, install some sort of vent in here to give it a bit more detail so you can actually see what's going on through there, maybe through a very fine silver mesh or something. So it's possible I'll have some other details on these, but for now let's get that mounted and let's get the functionality there. Okay, so I've mounted up both those panels. I've also painted the inside silver, mounted the servos, and done a few other bits and pieces with the magic of some 3D printed brackets. So now if I'm careful, I can push these servos out from behind. And we find that the panel's open. If I just reach across to the other one. There we go. So let's have a closer look at that. So inside each panel you can see these silver parts, and you can see me through here. That's the servo, and I've just in the end used the original servo horn and a bit of bent wire and a 3D printed hinge that's on the inside of these things. So that it opens and closes quite smoothly. Obviously these will be electronically controlled. Now the plan is that, as I mentioned several times, I can have some blue sequencing or white and blue lights, like logic lights flashing. And also there'll be all sorts of internal details, so lots of it's going to be fake, but I'm going to have all sorts of hoses and wires I'll probably 3D print a cover for the servo so you can't see it there. And basically when it opens it will look like it's the inside of the suit. Obviously I've got the Unibeam to fit, so hopefully I can have some wires and things that appear to run into the Unibeam, so these panels look like the supporting components. As I mentioned before, you can kind of see through here, so you can see me getting into the suit from the back, but I've got plans for lots of other opening panels which are just there for effect really. So you can see me getting in and out, the same as the ones in the back, and you can see that from the front as well as the back. So I guess we should get this Unibeam mounted. So coming back to our Unibeam assembly again, I've put in these silver blocks, which are basically the parts of the frame, which are the wooden parts, and I've added this additional yellow piece, which is a bracket which fixes onto the back of those from the inside of the suit, props up the dome, and it's also got two lumps on, and those lumps are for holding the Unibeam so they sit slightly higher than the bottom of the dome. So that's fairly self-explanatory. Let's get that printed off and we'll fit it and see how everything hangs together. So there's my Unibeam mount. So of course the Unibeam sits on top of there. I left a hole in the middle so the wires can poke through. So I'm going to acetone weld that onto there, and then the dome will fit on top of there once I've stuck that on properly, and then this whole thing screws in. So let's fit that together properly and we'll turn the suit round and screw it in. Right, so there's the current view into the back of the suit. So I've got my Unibeam which I've acetone welded onto this bracket, so I've used acetone to melt the two plastics together, which are ABS. So of course this mounts in here, just like in the CAD diagram, and screws on either side, and basically first of all we need to push the dome into the hole, which I've got just here, and that gets sandwiched in and held in by the bracket as well. So let's get a screwdriver and some screws and screw that in. So here it is all mounted from the front. So you can probably see that there's a ring of clear dome around the outside that's behind the chest plate. So the plan for that is to shine a ring of really bright lights into it, which means I can really pulse that Unibeam if I want to. I'm just shining a flashlight in here. There's nothing to stop me having sort of 4 to 8 really bright LEDs like the ones in my old Iron Man Unibeam if I wish. So that's all I've got for this time. In the next episode I'm going to be working my way down to the abdominal plates, and I think I need to take some more of these fake pistons and probably stick those inside, something like that, and also want other layered parts which are kind of bands that go across that look like big mechanical parts that are actuators for the abdominal stuff. The cod plate needs to be removable so that I can stack this for transport, so that's another thing that I need to build. And I probably need some more features that go up towards the arms, some more hoses, conduit, and lots of other things like that. So don't forget to check out my channel for some more updates on this project and other projects. And don't forget to like this video if you like it, to let me know. You can see some other projects in my channel, including more of my Hulkbuster suit, my Iron Man cosplay, and also my 3D printed alien xenomorph hand.